is to turn off your video camera unless you would like to speak or need to present an item. If after turning on your video, you want to be acknowledged to engage in the discussion, please raise your hand. Finally, remember to identify yourself when making comments or asking questions. And with that, Jess, I think we go to the, I skipped that part.
That's okay.
It'll be a few bucks. So right now, we have to declare whether or not we have any conflicts. And as we consider items on today's agenda, board members who wish to declare any conflicts of interest regarding today's open session are asked to do so now. Seeing none, I guess we're going to go on with the introduction of newly appointed regents. The hope was that this afternoon I could introduce you to our newest colleague, Dr. Jill Underly, who earlier this month had started her term as State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Unfortunately, Dr. Underly can't be with us this afternoon, so we'll do her formal introduction tomorrow morning. I believe at this time, President Thompson would like to say a few words.
Thank you very much, President Menendez, and well, welcome everybody in person, and it's great to see all the chancellors and all the Board of Regents and provosts and interested guests to come to the Board of Regents meeting. It's a wonderful day to have a meeting here in Madison. As you all probably know, Chancellor Dwight Watson recently announced that he is resigning as leader of UW-Whitewater effective June 30th to focus his time and energy on cancer treatment. I was very saddened to hear of Dwight's health challenges. I've talked to him several times, and I thanked him for his dedicated service to the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. I wished him well in his fight to get cured from cancer and have kept in contact with him since his first treatment. But at this time, we're very fortunate to have a trusted leader and former UW system colleague to step up, and also an individual was temporary provost at the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus and has a resume as long as your arm. It's delighted to report that Dr. Jim Henderson, former UW System Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs, has agreed to serve as interim chancellor while the university seeks a successor to Chancellor Watson. Jim has an exceptional track record. It's going to greatly benefit the system and especially UW-Whitewater. And prior to serving in the UW system, he was provost and vice president for academic affairs at University of Louisiana at Lafayette. And before that, he was dean of the College of Natural and Social Sciences at California State University in Los Angeles. I called Jim, and I had called him previously to ask if he wanted a job, and he said, no, not really, and he turned me down when I asked him to do it. I did not appreciate that, so when I called him for seeing if he would be a temporary chancellor, he said, yeah, I said, I'll take that. And I said, well, thanks for turning me down before, but I'm very happy. And Jim has taken his job very seriously. He's taken Whitewater by storm. I had called him on the on the 1st to ask if he was going to be ready to go on the 5th. He said, no, I'm going to get down today and spend the day at Whitewater. And he was, and yesterday morning he spoke at the business section of the Whitewater business community and did an exceptional job. So welcome, Chancellor Henderson, and thank you. And I believe you'd like to say a few words to introduce yourself. So Jim, floor is yours.
University of Whitewater is an amazing campus. We have and so I'm just really pleased to be able to be there and to support their efforts and get to know the community. And I look forward to spending time with them, and I look forward to them having a permanent chancellor. Thank you.
I called Jim last Friday after he was on the Whitewater campus for a day, and I said, how'd it go? And he says, Tommy, he said, I love this campus. He said, my wife and I spent a day down there just walking around, and we loved the campus. It was that dedication and support. You're going to do an outstanding job, Jim. Thank you for taking it. Finally, some news from the UW System Administration. It was announced earlier this week that Benedict Arnold, Scott Neitzel, will be resigning from his position as interim vice president for university relations. Scott has done an outstanding job for me and for the system. And Scott's budget and management service and experience was key to helping me navigate the many challenges presented by the pandemic this past year. His senior leadership with the Department of Administration enabled us to do many things we would never have been able to do without him accepting the role. He was instrumental in helping craft UW System's community and student testing program and just did an awesome job. And I think every one of the chancellors is, and I am in your debt, Scott. And the system's legislative budget approval, which have put the university in a much better position today. Scott has my sincerest thanks, even though I think he's very young to be retiring and very young to be leaving me, but his last day will be July 18th. Scott, did you want to acknowledge your resignation and or are you willing?
Going to Philadelphia. No, I just. No, I'd just like to say thank you.
Use the mic on the street, people on the street can hear you.
Yeah, you have to use the mic, Scott.
What if I don't want to hear? Okay, I would just like to say thank you to Governor Thompson for giving me the opportunity. It's been a very rewarding experience. I've learned a lot, and I will agree with what the governor often says is that the chancellors that this system have currently are really, really a great asset for this institution and for our state. And I've enjoyed working with all of them most of the time. But appreciate getting to know everybody, and best of luck. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to be around, but just time for me to move on. So thank you, everybody.
I have named Jeff Ferrant to succeed as interim vice president for university relations. Jeff has served in a variety of roles at UW System. I think all the chancellors know him since 2014, and most recently, he's been associate vice president for government relations, in which he oversees the system's interaction with the executive and legislative branches of state and federal government. And as you know, he was the point person with the legislature and the budget, which we came out not as good as I wanted to, but much better than a lot of people thought we would. A lot of the credit goes to Jeff. And with his extensive background in government relations, his history at UW System, Jeff offers invaluable experience in this role. And we look forward to working with you, Jeff. And is Jeff here? You just want to stand up and acknowledge that you're not going to leave me like Benedict Arnold did? Thanks, Jeff. With that, I'll turn the floor back to you, President Menendez.
Thank you, President Thompson. So now we're going to the approval of the minute records for the June 2nd, 2021 special meeting and the June 3rd and 4th, 2021 regular meeting of the Board of Regents. You've all been provided with them. May I have a motion to approve these records?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Minutes have been approved. Well, this is the time that I am to give my remarks. And since this is my first meeting, this will be obviously the first time I address you as President of the Board of Regents. What I'm about to say is kind of a thank you to President Thompson, to past President of the Board of Regents, Peterson, and Vice President Grebe. Thank you for all the work you've done in the past 2 years, looking out for the mental health of the students, of helping get through the pandemic. Special thanks to President Thompson for all he did and is doing regarding response to COVID-19. I think we all owe them a round of applause and thank you for that. With that in mind, I would like to say that now that COVID-19 is here with us and still an issue for us, our main focus is going to be returning the UW system to pre-pandemic college experience for our students and everybody on the campuses. We have recognition that COVID is going to be leaving us with lingering effects. And some of that is going to be in the area of student and employee behavioral health. And so we're actively engaged in a behavioral health initiative to improve the well-being and academic success of our students across the UW system. Because we know that healthy students are more likely to stay in school, graduate, and go on to lead productive lives and have good futures. This is a critical part of our commitment to providing a high-quality educational experience to our students in Wisconsin. Our efforts are comprehensive and include providing timely access to high-quality counseling, medical, and crisis intervention services, supporting diverse student populations who often feel more vulnerable and marginalized, cultivating a campus and system-wide culture of well-being so that all students feel comfortable openly talking about the challenges they may face and know that help is available in times of need. I am incredibly thankful for the talented and caring professionals we have on every campus in the system who are working to support students' overall well-being. We will continue to keep student behavioral health and mental health a high priority across the UW system. We also want to improve the campus climate for underrepresented students and employees. And we will be implementing changes to impact diversity, equity, and inclusion on all levels. Let me say this about what I just announced. As the leading educational system in the state of Wisconsin, in the Midwest, and perhaps the nation, we have to do more than just talk about equity and inclusion and diversity. We have to live it. We have to weave it through everything that we do in the system. We have to start doing what we're saying we're doing. We have to make our campuses more welcoming. We have to include more people. And it starts by just doing one thing a day to make that happen. It starts when we're met with something that happens that we are not prepared for, something that goes against maybe a tradition or a way we do things. We have to come to a conclusion about how to make it better and include people who are not being included because of a decision to stay with something that has gone on for a long time, a tradition, the way we've always done things. We can't change it because it's the way it is. We have to start thinking in ways to include people that are impacted by these policies, rules, regulations that are merely that. They're not the people that are impacted. And so I would ask us to start doing that on all our campuses, to make an effort to include, to welcome, and diversify by starting to actually do those things and teaching our communities and our citizens of the state of Wisconsin how it's done. And I know we have the ability to do that. I know we can do it. It's easy. All you have to do is start living what you're saying. And I'm counting on you to do that. As part of these efforts, I'm pleased to tell you that Governor Thompson came up with a really good idea and implemented it, as did, and I think past Regent President Peterson also had a big hand in this. They had some extra money and they implemented the Wisconsin Region Opportunity Scholarship. Now, this is going to bring and help students either come to campus, stay at campus, or graduate. And it's a way of helping include them. It's a way of helping them get to their goal. And it's a way of helping us all get better in the system. These are scholarships that are intended to recognize underrepresented and underserved students who have overcome adversity, demonstrated financial need, and possess records of merit that include strong academic performance, significant personal achievements, and service to their communities. The overall objective in establishing this new scholarship is to provide financial support to deserving students at key points in their educational journey. In this inaugural round, 267 students all around the UW system will be awarded scholarships totaling $995,000. Congratulations to the recipients. We hope this will, in fact, provide new opportunities. I also want to comment on another issue that was talked about in the last meeting. The UW system's allocation of state GPR dollars. Given the complexity of this issue, I want to make sure that we approach this in the right way and fulfill our obligation as regents and as a board of regents. In the next few weeks, I intend to appoint several regents to a special committee to review the bylaws and governance issues of the board. As you may recall, the board approved the creation of this committee in May of this year. The allocation of GPR dollars will be one of the priority items this committee will be asked to address. In the time ahead, I look forward to working with this board and our colleagues all around the system to continue to provide students, families, and peoples of Wisconsin the highest quality education UW can give and they expect to receive. I want to say one final thing on a personal note. In the last 4 weeks or so, I have received congratulations, which I humbly accept. I received words of encouragement, which made me feel good. I had a lot of comments made about this particular job. Those comments ranging from, you're going to be walking a tightrope all the time. There are lots of tricky issues and you're going to have to watch your back. There's going to be time consuming. It's a different situation. I wouldn't want to be you. Those are the kinds of things that some of my friends said to me. Well, you know what? My friends don't get to sit around this table and they don't get to look at and respect the people that are here on the Board of Regents that have been successful, that are intelligent, that possess a will and a drive to win, that love the university system and will do all in their power to help everyone in it succeed and its students to succeed. That makes me not care if I'm walking a tightrope, not care if it's a tricky situation, not care if I can't trust everybody and what they say. I think with your help that we can overcome all of these issues that people think exist out there. I'm also looking forward to the help from the chancellors. Our chancellors are people that we spend a lot of time and energy selecting from pools of very qualified people. And I think we have the best chancellors that we could have sitting in this room now. And I'm looking forward to you helping us because you know your campuses, you know your issues, you know what's best for your students and your facility. We want you to tell us. We want to hear from you. The tables that you're seated at now have microphones, and if something comes up that you think we should know, I think you owe it to us to tell us so that we can make better informed decisions about whatever the issue is. I also look forward to the help of the system, all the great staff and people that work so hard to do all the work necessary to make the system go. And the great President Tommy Thompson, who is here not because he has to be, but because he wants to be, because he loves the system, because he wants to do what's in its best interest, because he cares about it deeply. And he's emotional, and I like that. I like that. I like someone that gets upset or someone that gets happy or someone that's excited. And you do all of those things. And I'm looking forward to you continuing to do that so that we can have a successful year and decade. So thank you very much. Those conclude my remarks. Thank you. So now I think it's the report of the system president that's next on the agenda.
Well, first off, let me thank you, President Menendez. Your comments were very much appreciated. And I can tell you this much, that the chancellors we have in our system, I've been all over the country and I've never seen a group of individuals more dedicated and serve better and lead better than the group of chancellors we have on our campuses. And I know, just like the staff at the system and myself personally, we dedicate to make sure that your presidency is going to be extremely successful. And we will be there to help you in any way we possibly can And all of us together are going to make the University of Wisconsin system even better. So thank you for your comments. I also wanted to point out that the Regents Scholarship, that the President Menendez has discussed, this was money that we saved from doing away with some subscriptions, a lot of travel, during the pandemic, and also for people that were placed on furlough. And I thought we should recognize the sacrifice that those employees made. And when we were able to do it, I called at that time President Drew Peterson, and I said, Drew, we have $1 million that we have right now uncommitted, and I would like to set up a scholarship for underserved and underrepresented students, and I would like to call it the Regents Scholarship. And Drew successfully agreed to that, and that became the start of this program. And as President Menendez has pointed out, 267 scholarships all over the state. And what we did is we gave each campus $77,000, and each campus made up their own mind as to how that money was going to be distributed. And some campuses wanted to give more money to a fewer students. Other campuses wanted to give more scholarship to more students. And so it totaled up 267, but it was left up to the campuses to decide the qualification. But I told the press yesterday, I hope that the Board of Regents continues this program, because I called 8 students yesterday that did not know they were going to receive the grant. And when I called and told them, I can't tell you the excitement and the cheers that went up by those students. They were extremely ecstatic. And these are students that probably would not be able to stay in school, go to school. And so your scholarships mean a lot. And I hope you remember that and you're able to successfully continue the program in the future. As President Menendez also noted, the UW system is now keenly focused on ensuring that the fall 2021, that our UW students, our faculty, our staff, and campus communities will enjoy a full return to the pre-pandemic college life experience. I was on the Platteville campus on Tuesday, and I met with the faculty senate and the student government and the chancellor's cabinet, and of course the chancellor. And they all told me universally that it's so important that we get back to teaching in class. In fact, the engineering school professor came up and said, we're going to have 95% of our classes in engineering in person. And one professor doesn't want to do it, but by Labor Day, that individual will be teaching in person. I didn't ask who it was, didn't want to know, but they expect to have 100% of their classes in engineering, which is a major course at Platteville, in person. It's just an indication the students that I talked to all want to get back in person. So this is going to be the year we return, hopefully, to normalcy throughout the university. And building on the momentum of this past spring, we have now administered more than 264,000 COVID-19 vaccines at clinics on our UW campuses. And as you know, we want to get to 70% of our students vaccinated. Rebecca Blank, Chancellor Blank, has indicated she wants to get to 90%, and she's almost at 85% right now. I give her credit for her leadership in that regard, and I'm very hopeful that the chancellors and all of us working together will get some. We got a lot of things planned, which I will be announcing at a later time, to get more of the students vaccinated. But 265,000 COVID-19 vaccines were done on our campuses. It's vital that we support, as the president has indicated, the whole student. That includes students' academic, emotional, financial, and overall health. And to that end, the UW system is expanding some of our traditional programs to address what we know is greater needs. And more specifically, we're expanding our summer bridge program And this is a program that the Board of Regents allowed me to give out a $1.3 million as loans to the chancellors to expand their bridge program. Some colleges, universities took advantage of the loan. Some campuses did not, but all of them expanded their program. Mentioned Platteville several times because I was there on Tuesday and I'll be in Superior next Tuesday. But their summer bridge program had 500 students before the pandemic. This year it's going to have 1,500. I applaud that because these are students that probably would not be going to college unless they came to the Platteville campus and had a chance to interact with students and faculty and be able to see what a beautiful campus it is and how important college education is. I keep hearing all the time that our students that are graduating from high school do not believe that college education is important. And every one of my speeches, I'm telling people how important a university college education is, or any college education, but I specifically mentioned the University of Wisconsin, the best in the country. But our summer bridge program this year is expected to more than double than previous years. I'm very proud of that. We'll be hearing more about this program tomorrow, but I wanted to highlight one of the initiatives the UW system is focusing on to ensure a successful college experience for our students. I am pleased to report the summer program for youth that have been so popular over the years are back in business this summer. These are all promising signs that the UW is going to continue to be a place that enriches lives and offers opportunity for so many people in this great state. I'm also pleased to share the news that the new fall freshman applications of the UW system universities are up by about 30% over each of the last 2 years. Moreover, applications by Wisconsin residents, first-generation students, and underrepresented minorities are also up. Green Bay is up. Chancellor Mike Alexander could not be with us today because the president's signing the budget bill there this afternoon. But his enrollment applications are up over 70%. And my good friend Jim Schmidt said his applications are up over 50% in Eau Claire. These increases are the result of several actions that the UW system has taken over the last 12 months to simplify the application process, including waiving application fees on all of the campuses except for 3, and creating a new e-app, electronic application, allowing students to use a single application for multiple universities, and suspending the requirement that students take the ACT test. I am thrilled with these positive application numbers. I believe it shows that our strategies are working and we're setting the stage for success this fall. The 30% increase in applications, now we have to harvest them. We have to have, I hope, a record enrollment on all of our campuses. So far, the UW universities have received more than 133,000 applications. I want to say that one more time. 133,000 applications, about 30% higher than at the same point in 2020 and 33% higher than in 2019. We know that not all students who apply and are admitted will enroll, but the increase in applications is nonetheless very encouraging. While the pandemic challenged all of us, students are showing every sign they are primed to get back to campus this fall, and we want them to know that we're ready as ever to help them achieve their education goals. The UW has also taken steps as a system to be more efficient and effective. And I'm looking at the regent from Brown County to make sure he hears this. In this morning's Business and Finance Committee meeting, Regents approved a 10-year contractual agreement between the UW system and Workday Inc. for cloud-based enterprise resource, the planning software for the ATP program. I really want to talk a little bit about the ATP program. because it is going to be the biggest expenditure the University of Wisconsin has ever done. It's going to be in the neighborhoods of several hundreds of millions of dollars. And we need it. Computer system and the way we handle business at the university is yesterday's way of operations. And if you've been looking and watching, which I know all of you have because you can't miss it on the news, the hacking that's going on. There's organized hacking groups funded by the governments, their own governments, to hack into our systems. And yes, we've been hacked. But we have to make sure that we get through the Administrative Transformation Program, the ATP program. And Workday is a giant step forward, and I thank the Business Committee for approving it. We also have to update IT as a service. We do not have our data. We have it stored on campuses, and it's got to be stored in the cloud if it's going to be protected. Now, this is something that I will be long gone before it is finished, but I am going to push damn hard, pardon my language, but I mean I'm this passionate about it. This is the biggest program Board of Regents are going to be involved in, and the biggest program for the University of Wisconsin, in order to be run like a modern institution. And that's why I'm spending time on it, because I want to emphasize how important it is to me, to the Board of Regents, and to the university system. It's a multi-year program across the UW system to address legacy process inefficiencies, risks and gaps and punctuality, and to build an administrative infrastructure for the future. While the project suffered a setback last February, we have aggressively redoubled our efforts because this project is critical to the successful management of the UW system. In fact, a new request for a proposal, an RFP, is open right now. We put it out last week on implementation services. That was issued last week with plans to bring it to the Regents yet this year. Chancellor Blank and I recently approved a timeline that will now simultaneously benefit all campuses, whereas it was originally intended to have UW-Madison implemented first, with others coming on a year or more later. I do not believe that's a good process. We have got to move together as a system, and the ATP is the glue that's going to make the system operate. A unified plan will benefit all universities at once. And taken together, these steps are moving the critical ATP project forward. Another quick update, another success on the status of the procure to payment. If you remember, all the procurement was done when I came in on individual campuses. We consolidated that to a P2P automation program, and that was kicked off on April 16th this year. It's now known as SHOP, UW Plus. We're shopping in bulk. And since its launch in mid-April, I would go around the table and I bet none of you could guess how much we've already implemented. But since the middle of April, there have been over $220 million in requisitions at all of our universities. The project launch has been a tremendous success. And automating purchasing this way is going to save money, time, and make the system that much stronger. Turning now to the biennial budget. Last week, the legislature passed the state budget as proposed by the Joint Finance Committee. The budget passed by the legislature provided $8.2 million in additional GPR. $628 million for building projects, which is really 720 when you add in the other money that's coming in. A 2% pay plan increase in each year, and returns, something that we've all wanted and rightly deserve, tuition setting authority to the Board of Regents by not exceeding the tuition freeze, by not extending the tuition freeze. This is an incredible, important step and one that restores the power and the accountability back to the UW system and the Board of Regents. I believe this is partly the result of efforts to increase our accountability and transparency. It's an authority we should have. It would be a great development in the relationship between the UW system and the legislature. The budget also terminated the $45 million annual lapse, which meant that we didn't have to pay back into the government $45 million in this fiscal year, which ended on June 30th. And moving forward, wouldn't have another lapse for 2021, which is another $90 million. The budget signing is happening today. And I want to thank Governor Evers and the legislature for their leadership, especially for investing in critical improvements in our infrastructure and support for our employees. I would also like to say a few words about our proposed operating budget, which is next on the agenda today. There are several key takeaways that I think are important. I will be very brief so you, the board, can dive into greater detail with Vice President Sean Nelson in a moment. First, and I'm very happy to be able to tell the legislature and the public, we are again keeping the increase in the average cost of attendance at our university systems very low. In fact, the increase for the coming year is 1%. Now, I just wanted to have you listen to that one more time. The increase in costs for a student going to one of our wonderful universities is just 1%. That tells me that the chancellor's system and the Board of Regents are doing a great job managing higher education for all of our students and our citizens and taxpayers. This is the fourth year in a row we've had an increase that low. We look to maintain our commitment to access and affordability because this new university system has got to be student-centric. Second, with planned increases in GPR for 2022, we're investing in several key initiatives that's going to benefit Wisconsin, the economy, and the leadership of our state. That includes supporting the Freshwater Collaborative, which is going to be a program that's going to set aside the University of Wisconsin above all other states and all other institutions. Supporting 20 additional agriculture positions, which is going to help agriculture all over the state, and supporting the establishment of a foster youth program to help students who formerly resided in a foster group home. Third, we want to provide additional funding to support nursing educators across Wisconsin for fiscal year 2023, where UW University is going to be a major beneficiary. We need to make sure that our universities take a look at the needs of our society. We have a real need for getting nursing educators. We need nurses that are still going through school to continue to get out their masters and PhDs, and some nurses that are working in the field where they can make more money, come back to our universities and get their masters and PhD and become professors. Very important. The same thing for teaching and teachers in this state. And we have to do a better job of getting money for them as well. Finally, the pay plan. We're slated to receive 2% in January of 2022 and 2% in January of 2023. That will make 6 years of pay plans for our valuable faculty and staff. As I have said before, I have long believed there's no better investment for the state of Wisconsin than the University of Wisconsin system. When Wisconsin taxpayers invest in the UW system, our universities produce educated, successful graduates who contribute to their communities and to the economy. 37,000 graduates a year, of which 90% stay in Wisconsin for 5 years. That's a tremendous thing for us here at the university to continue to proclaim to people that will listen why the university system is the economic engine for Wisconsin. When I came here, I said I wanted to do things to make the University of Wisconsin system the best that it could possibly be. These initiatives that I mentioned today are all steps in the right direction. That concludes my report, President Menendez. I will turn the floor back to you, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, President Thompson. At this time, we turn our attention to the 2021-2022 annual operating budget for the fiscal year that began on July 1st. To lead the presentation of the annual budget request, I'm going to call on Sean Nelson, Vice President of Finance. Sean, please take the stage.
So I can see. Okay. Great. Okay, let's get started. We got the news just earlier today that the governor signed the budget. So happy to report that all of which is contained herein is approved and moving forward. First of all, and as President Thompson mentioned, our state operational funding, our GPR will go up about 4.4%, or about 42.3 million, half of which it will be allocated towards our pay plan. We are also getting, of course, the tuition setting authority back with the Board of Regents. And the Board of Regents budget resolution will call for no increase for resident undergraduate tuition in the upcoming academic year. And then finally, again, as President Thompson mentioned, the average cost of attendance held to a 1% increase. This is the fourth consecutive year of 1% or lower at the four-year campuses. So I think what I would like to do is just walk through our budget sources, then we'll dig in a little bit more where the additional investment is happening. So in terms of our overall expense budget, let's start with the state support. We're going to get about over $1 billion, about 15% of our total budget for our operating budget through the state. We receive an additional amount through debt service, which I'll talk about in a moment. And again, we're up about 4.4% in our operational GPR. On the debt service side, we get about 3% of our total budget, or a little over 200 million. That actually will go down year over year, as we had some debt refinancing and some debt rolling off from facilities. And on the tuition side, at about 24% of our total budget, about $1.5 billion. Actually, a slight uptick there, about 7.6 million, largely the result of professional school increases and non-resident increases. Our auxiliaries, so this is the student-facing, self-supporting operations like housing, dining, parking, for example, about 11% of our total budget, and probably not surprisingly down a little bit by about 35 million. That is a direct reflection of enrollments and less students on campus at most of our institutions. General program operations, so these are the enterprise revenue type activities, for example, camps, clinics, conferences, dairy sales, the union terrace, and so forth. Overall, about 7% of our total budget, with an increase of a little under 10% for FY22. Our federal indirect reimbursement, so this is revenue generated from administering our federal grants across our institutions. Most of that activity is at Madison, and that is about 3% of our total budget, and that is up just slightly, just below 3 in FY22. Then moving to our gifts, grants, and contracts, highly restricted revenue, largely the research enterprise at Madison, about 1.36 billion. However, our philanthropic activity is also in this, and that is actually up just under 1% for FY22. Then finally, our federal financial aid, about 16% of the total budget, a little over $1 billion, not surprising again, due to enrollment declines. We're seeing a slight decrease there, about 4% or 43 million. So all in, estimated FY22 revenue is about $6.5 billion. And the revenue change, again, highlighting those areas that are sensitive to enrollments. We're on the auxiliaries and the federal financial aid. And then again, a slight uptick on tuition and a pretty reasonable investment there, I think, on the state side of about 4.4%. Now, where were the state budget increases? So of the 42.3 million, We did get 2.5 million to advance the efforts amongst UW institutions for the Freshwater Collaborative. That is ongoing funding. Same for the UW Extension Cooperative County Agricultural Agents, $1 million intended to fund 20 positions through UW Madison. And then 250,000 for UW institutions to support foster youth programs for students who formerly resided in a foster or group home. We know there are several campuses that already have these programs. This will help augment or add additional ones throughout our system. And then, as I noted, 21 million for the state share of pay plan and an additional 17 million for anticipated fringe benefit increases or the cost to continue our operations. We had a couple of other GPR increases from the state for some one-time initiatives. 250,000 for the UW-Madison Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies. That is a partnership with the U.S. Department of Defense. And then an additional 250,000 in one-time funding to foster collaboration amongst the UW system, US DoD, and the Water Council, a global partnership based in Milwaukee to advance water research and economic development, of which I believe Regent Bechtel and Chancellor Mone serve on the board. I want to focus on paid plan for a moment. So the biennial budget calls for 2% plus 2% with an implementation dates of January of 2023 and January 2022 and January of 2023. How that traditionally breaks out is the state supports 70% of the total cost of pay plan, and the campuses pick up 30%. You can see it broken out here, the darker red, the state share, and 30% in the campus share. The total cost of pay plan in FY22 will be just shy of 30 million. So the campuses will have to come up with 8.4 million. Now, I should note, this is the 5th consecutive year of a 2% pay plan. We have not had a tuition hike during any of that period. So campuses have had to cover $40 million of pay plan over that time. Now, the other funding increase that President Thompson noted, not for FY22, but certainly worth mentioning, is the support for the Nurse Educator Initiative. This is additional $5 million in ongoing funding that will start in FY23. This will be funded through the Higher Education Aids Board, not directly through UW system. And it's trying to achieve 3 things. It's going to reward fellowships to students who enroll in advanced degrees for nursing. It'll offer loan repayment assistance to recruit and retain faculty. And then finally, have a loan repayment assistance for nursing educators that commit to teach for 3 consecutive years at a UW institution, Wisconsin Technical College, or one of the private nonprofits throughout the state. We have 6 programs in nursing, so we expect to be a prime beneficiary of this funding going forward. With respect to tuition, we mentioned the biennial budget does not include language prohibiting the Board of Regents from setting tuition, though the BOR, the Board of Regents budget resolution, does call for no increase in resident undergraduate tuition for the upcoming academic year. This will be the 9th consecutive year of no increased tuition for resident undergraduates. In fact, it's even more at the 2-year campuses. I believe it's the 11th year of the last 12. And finally, perhaps somewhat counterintuitively, we have had a net tuition revenue increase. That is largely attributable to the professional school increases at Madison and some of the enrollment changes at Madison, as well as some differential tuition at UW Stevens Point. Now, I know Chancellor Blank likes to show this slide annually, as do I. I think this is important to show. When you look at the Midwest and the regional flagships, you can see the variance, what's happening around us, and with UW-Madison just next to last there with respect to our peers. You know, I've used this number before. I think if we were to get up to the mean or even something closer to University of Michigan Ann Arbor campus and about 15,000 undergraduate resident students, it's about an $80 million revenue change variation from those 2 states. Then I think I wanted to show this slide again. I feel like this may be counterintuitive as well. So this is the reflection of our GPR tuition balances as of the end of the last fiscal year, which just ended a little over a week ago. You note the very last column is our estimated amount of where we think we're going to end up once we do the final reconciliations, just shy of 295 million. I'll tell you why that is. Well, As you heard, we did have a planned budget reduction for FY21 from the state. And that was slated to be $45 million. Now, the campuses were very proactive in reducing costs so they could make that payment, if you will, back to the state or reduce those costs commensurate with that amount. Well, just a month ago on June 8th, we found out from Governor Evers that we did not have to actually submit a lapse in a budget reduction, and those funds came back to the institutions. So if you see just that little red shaded area, that is the effect of the lapse coming back to the UW campuses. However, I think it's important to note that green line that is overlaid on top of this chart, that is under Region Policy 21-6, that is our reporting threshold for our program revenue balances. And that represents 12% of our operating expense. So if you look over time, if you assume, if you accept that as a reasonable proxy for a prudent level of reserves, we've been well below that for the last couple of years. In fact, we've been at or below that number really since back to 2016. So even with the return of the lapse, we are still below sort of that 12% of our operating expenses year over year. And I would argue we should probably be a little bit higher than that amount. Auxiliary rates. This is important. We want to talk about why and how we can raise rates. So we are limited. We do limit the campuses to submit their proposals, but they have to be based around 6 different items. Is it a mandated compensation? In our case, yes. So we have a pay plan projected. We will have a pay plan projected for FY22. Any contractual agreements, for example, any changes to dining contracts or housing contracts, debt service, enumerated capital projects, student-initiated proposals. We've seen a lot around mental health, for example, that have come through, and student safety. I'm happy to report that the total SEG fees at the 4-year campuses will increase on average by just $10 a year, or 0.1%. And remarkably, 5 campuses actually reduced the segregated fees or held them flat from the prior year. At Madison, they're reducing their SEG fees by $22. At Milwaukee, they're reducing their SEG fees by $20. But overall, this is a very modest increase in the total segregated fees. Room and board rates, similarly, at the 4-year campuses, they will increase on average by about $150 a year, or just shy of 2%. Now, in terms of how those costs have been allocated, in terms of the increases on the segregated fee side, and of course, these support student activities, organized activities, and other student services. Vast majority of that is for the mandated pay plan and compensation. Another piece around contractual changes of just less than 10%. Major projects are always a big one from year to year. We have a few examples here: the field house at La Crosse, the Falcon Center at River Falls, or the rec complex at Stout. And on the student initiated side, we have many campuses. We had 8 campuses come in with improvements to the organized activities or added sports programming and so forth. On the room and board side, overall, again, just shy of 2% or $150. Most of that, or a big share of that, on the contractual side. Major projects, another large piece at just about a third. We had 7 major projects at 7 institutions, including, for example, starting the electrical upgrades at River Falls and the roof and energy projects at DeBow and so forth at Stevens Point. And this is the chart President Thompson was referring to. Our average cost of attendance for the upcoming academic year, again, held to 1%. Obviously, frozen tuition is a big part of the denominator, but this has been the case now for 4 years. In fact, if you were a freshman starting in the fall of 18 and graduating in the spring of 22, you'll have seen the average cost of attendance only grow by 3.8% across our UW institutions. Pretty remarkable. Now, we do have individual level detail by institution in your budget board document. I think it starts around page 25. Each campus will have a snapshot of their enrollment over the last 5 years, as well as pie charts on year-over-year changes in revenue and expense, as well as a small table at the bottom as the reason for any auxiliary change or seg fee change that we just walked through a moment ago. It's very helpful detail, I think, to dig through. Now, there's been quite a bit of conversation around GPR allocation. I know it started at last week's board meeting in Milwaukee, and I just want to take an opportunity To just give some background on how our GPR allocation is allocated, a little bit of history of where we are and how we got here. You know, we do make changes to the GPR allocation every year. It's incremental. We do increases based on a biennial budget change. So for example, when we had the Dairy Innovation Hub last biennium, River Falls, Platteville, and Madison got additional GPR to support that program. We make adjustments based on pay plan increases and any fringe benefit adjustments over time. And same on the utility side, right? We will adjust GPR to the campus based on their use of utilities. In Appendix A in your document, there's much more detail in how we make these adjustments year over year. So we have done some previous review of the GPR allocation. Since 1998, there have been several efforts to comprehensively review the GPR allocation formula, with the last effort back in 2014-15. The committees did have broad representation from campuses, system leadership, and regents. However, no substantive changes to the underlying allocation were made as a result of those efforts. Now, I'm here to tell you, I mean, there are many folks who are involved in this, and my staff has been around quite a while, and there's been a lot of background, there's a lot of institutional knowledge around these efforts. I think one of the big issues has always been this exercise is much easier to do in an environment where we have more money, when you're expanding the pie and not just using the existing pie and have winners and losers. And that really has been one of the key issues, I think, in some of these prior efforts. That being said, we have made two minor changes. In my time here, we did a return of a $25 million budget lapse back in 2018. And we also had an allocation of $45 million in outcomes-based funding back in 2019-20. The architect of that is now with us. Hi, Mr. Henderson, Chancellor Henderson now. And that was an effort as well to, you know, assign a series of metrics and allocate resources in that manner. Now, when you look at our overall GPR, so of course it's about 18% of our total budget, or about $1.2 billion. Half of it is kind of off the table, right off the top. So out of that 1.2 billion, 20% covers my employee benefits costs. My debt service, as we talked about, is about $210 million. Our utilities aren't going away. That's about 10% of our total $1.2 billion in GPR. We have a couple of earmarks. For example, the State Lab of Hygiene and the Veterinary Diagnostic Lab also receive GPR through the system. And then we have a couple of financial aid programs, the Tuition Assistant Grant and the Lawton Grant, that benefit students. So just those alone is about half of the overall pie here, a little over 600 million of our total GPR that comes through UW's system. It gets a little more flexible as you move clockwise through the pie chart. UW Extension at Madison receives a share, system administration, right? Receives their share of GPR, as well as some of the professional schools, you know, the law school, the School of Business, or the veterinary school. And then, as I mentioned, the outcomes-based funding. I will note on the outcomes-based funding, we could make tweaks to the formula and how that is allocated, but that would require JFC approval to do so. So when you sort of net all of these out and you think about what does this distill down to, it's really about a little over 250 million of your remaining budget. And I hate to use the word discretionary because it's not, because campuses do anticipate receiving this resource, but it does have the most flexibility. I think that's important to frame it up in that way, and so folks can understand how we allocate those dollars through the system. I think looking ahead, so the governor did sign the budget today. We are still awaiting the approval of pay plan. That will happen by the Joint Committee on Employee Relations. That happens in the late summer or early fall. And then we're reviewing the timeline for future auxiliary and tuition rate setting. This is really important. I'm always kind of puzzled when we come to the board just 8 weeks before school starts and we're setting tuition or we're setting auxiliary rates. I think this is something we should probably think about a little sooner in the year, a little bit more predictability to students and to parents as they think about their educational costs for the upcoming academic year. And then finally, I know Regent President Menendez talked a little bit about this in his comments, reviewing considerations on how our state support should be allocated amongst our UW institutions. So I look forward to working with Regents and others on that effort over the course of the year. We will apprise you as we go through the fiscal year of any changes that happen. I think at this point, we'll be reporting back out on pay plan we can find out the ultimate outcome, and any other substantive changes will come before the board. Then finally, I think just before taking questions, I do acknowledge all of the work that goes into this. It's just remarkable. I mean, this is like a 9-month effort, working with the chancellors and the chief business officers and the budget directors and the controllers and, those folks who work in the auxiliary units. But also our UWSA staff has just been remarkable, particularly during this COVID period and working remote. It's just been an immense help to me in putting this all together. And that's Renee Stevenson, Amy Arnold, Julie Gordon, Gary Bueller, Jen Goitowski, Chrissy Clapham, Mickey Crawl, and Katie Potasic. So thank you to all of them for their efforts in supporting me. Much appreciated. So I think that will wrap it up. I'm happy to take any questions about the budget.
Well, before we get to that, I want you to know that I took Dr. Rice's suggestion and bought Robert's Rules of Order for Dummies, and I've gotten partway through it. So I know a little bit more than I knew maybe a month ago. I think Vice President Nelson just presented us with Resolution 8, the operating budget. I think the next step will be for us to, before we discuss it, have a motion to approve Resolution 8. So do I have such a motion?
So moved. Regent Ryan.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, wait a minute. Can't do that. See? Not myself. Now we discuss it. Okay, so now, Vice President Nelson, you may call on regents who have questions about the budget.
Sure, happy to answer any questions of the regents. I'm looking at you, Regent Atwell.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking and congratulating System President Thompson, you, Sean, my fellow regents Peterson, Many Deeds, and everybody who worked on the state budget. It wasn't everything that you wanted, but we made progress with the lapse, with the pay plan. Restoring tuition authority to the regents is a big win. And I also want to note and tell you that I appreciate the efforts to keep down the cost to the student. Access is a big part of our mission across the system, and we're critical of the futures of students, and particularly those from lower income and underrepresented groups. Sean, it won't come as a surprise to you that I would like to see you to develop the habit of presenting not just cost to the student, but cost of the student. And I want to take a minute to explain why. When I look at the enrollment trends across the system, first of all, I'm delighted to hear that applications are up. I think we were wise to take the moves to eliminate the cost and adopt a universal application. I hope that that translates to higher enrollment. I'm hearing rumblings that there are positive developments there, but it's too early to see. Nevertheless, when you look at the enrollment trends, which are in the data you provided, we have at least 6 of our 4-year institutions that are regional comprehensives that have had a consistent decline in enrollment. And particularly at the former 2-year locations, which are now part of those institutions, the enrollment trends are particularly challenging. And the reason this is important is because when we look at GPR dollars per student, we need to take account of the scope of our system in relation to the population of the state and in relation to the demography of the state. A low growth state that is aging, particularly as you get outside the major urban areas. So competitive strategists would call the higher ed in general, but particularly in states like Wisconsin, you're in a red ocean situation where you're competing for, in a mature market, for a declining pool of traditional students. And I commend our institutions for working on alternative ways to enroll, attracting people back who have not gone to school or not completed degrees, reaching people that we've not reached before. I think much of the Milwaukee discussion about GPR per student and basic need per student, I think was centered on, at least in my mind, and I think in several of my colleagues, not so much about taking from one institution and getting it to another, although we did raise the GPR formula. But what to me, I was really struck by not so much the cost to the kids who are attending, but the scale of the kids who aren't attending. And I just, the whole spirit of that was, how do we do better on the access mission in that campus, which most clearly, I believe, and we certainly say it does, has a special mission of access to underrepresented groups. And I think it's important that we evaluate ourselves and see if we're putting our money where our mouth is. There is talk, there was the Roth report, and I think I have been someone who's wanted to advance the discussion of restructuring in a forward-looking way. And I don't want that to be understood as a lack of willingness or desire to invest, but rather to make sure that we're investing in a way that is going to make the outcome more accessible, higher quality, and better across as many locations as we can maintain. When we look at GPR dollars per student at our campuses and we compare them to peer institutions in other states, I'd like the data to reflect, because I don't know the data, do those states have the scope of campus system that we do? Or are our GPR dollars per student across the system and with particular campuses suffering somewhat from the physical scale of what we're trying to do in a legacy way? So I doubt whether this question of enrollment across the system is going to just go away. I would love to be sitting here next year with former governor for life and system president Thompson wagging his finger at me and saying, "I told you so." I look forward to that. But generally, I think that the characteristics of the demography in our state, particularly when you get outside the Madison, Milwaukee area, are such that we need to be looking at what the cost of the student across the whole system is, and on a by campus basis. Not so we can frame up an ugly discussion where we tear each other apart, but so that we can deal realistically with a fundamental long-term challenge in the interest of the future students that we need to serve. And the ways to do that can be done creatively, these are things we need to explore. I'm sure better digital is a much bigger part of it. I know that we're looking at cost structures and so forth, but if we're going to preserve 26 locations and access points, which are very important in those communities, I just doubt whether we're going to be able to do it by hanging on to everything that we've done in the past and the way we've done it. So that's kind of, Sean, why I keep nagging at you to not just brag about the cost to the student. I'm happy about that, but the cost of the student, which is the total budget by campus, let me get this right, divided by the student FTEs. And I know there's going to be problems with the data. All data needs to be interpreted. So let's not be afraid to look at it. So I guess, and in general, that's kind of what I want to say, because I think it's important to our future, and I just don't want us to be afraid to look at difficult topics. I want us to look at them and talk about them and be forward-looking. Thank you.
Thanks, Regent Howell.
So is that a yes, Regent Atwell? You'll see that next year?
Yes,
Mr.
we'll work on that.
Yes, President Thompson.
May I respond?
Yes, you may.
I ask unanimous consent to respond to Regent Atwell. I always listen with a great deal of intensity to when you speak, Bob. And I don't disagree with your conclusion as it relates to the cost of the student. But I disagree with you strongly about the GPR dollars going into the university system. When you take a look at this university system, when I was governor, 1/3 of the funding for the University of Wisconsin came from the state. Today, it's 18%. And I look at that and I look at the fact that we're returning about $24, $24 for every $1 we receive. And we're graduating 37,000 graduates that are building this economic engine called the University of Wisconsin. When I talked to the legislators, I said, if you give me 18 cents and I turn around and give you 82 cents, you being the banker, how often would you do that, Bob? You probably would do it as often as you could reach in your pocket and pick up 18 cents. I know you. And the legislature has got to realize that they've got a tremendous investment here and should do it. I don't disagree with you at all about the size of a university. But I do disagree with you is that it should only be the University of Wisconsin that should cut back. We have 26 campuses. Vocational schools have 54 campuses. And until we're willing to study higher education that I've been asking for, I think we're still going to keep doing it and trying to compete with each other for students. And I'm not saying that we should take over the vocational schools. I'm not saying we should give up on the 2-year campuses, but I'm saying people like you, Bob Atwell, and I say this as a friend and as somebody that respects you, you should be advocating as strongly as you possibly can in Brown County and from your positions to advocate for a statewide blue ribbon task force, which I've been calling for a long time, to study higher education. What should be the cost to the student? How many buildings should we have? Who should be running the 2-year campuses? Should there be a vocational school on the same block as a 2-year campus? Are the students really declining in high school? And where are they going? What sort of courses do we need for the future to make Wisconsin as strong as we possibly can? This should not be a study by Tommy Thompson, but it should be a study by Bob Atwell, an interested citizen in higher education, and study it. I would dare to say that you and I would agree about 95% of the way if we had a study and could take a look at higher education, how we could improve it, how we could save money. And I'm hoping before I leave, I'm going to be able to convince you, the members of the Board of Regents, the governor, and the legislature that the smartest thing for us in this state would be to have a blue ribbon task force on how to study higher education, what should be the results, and where we should go as a state. Until we do that, we're going to piecemeal here, piecemeal there, spend money there, and never accomplish the objective. What is the best interest for the student? What is in the best interest of the state of Wisconsin? What is in the best interest of higher education? That's where we have to go.
Reaching out, well, responding.
Well, I find myself in the strange position of being, or not strange position of being in violent agreement with almost everything you said. And having been a fan of the most legendary political figure in my lifetime in the state, I'm loath to actively debate with you. But I would like to clarify something.
Yes.
I am a fan of future investment. I'm a fan of future GPR dollars. I fear that if we invest in the past, as opposed to mapping out our own future, what we're going to be doing is providing the fuel for further internal competition among our institutions that are already competing in a red ocean for the same students. And I know there's a little polite, we don't compete with each other, but more general GPR dollars spread like peanut butter over the whole thing is going to fuel further competition. And I'm not criticizing any of these institutions for having lower enrollment. I agree with you. I'm an advocate. I don't want a useless blue ribbon commission that says nice things and doesn't do anything. And I somewhat I guess two other things while we're having what I think is a fruitful exchange. In the area of the state I live in the area of state you come from, there are structural changes happening across every institution almost except for higher ed. Hospitals, Dr. Rye, K through 12 school systems, fire departments, municipalities, banks, grocery stores. That we're having to find ways to do things differently with not doing them the same legacy way with more resources. So I'm just arguing to do it differently, and let's create a platform that we can really go to town arguing for investment. Secondly, as far as me putting 12 cents out to get $1 or whatever that math is, I just want to, the one thing I want to say as a parent of someone who has put 7 kids so far through our UW system, a system that I'm grateful for. When we say it's a 23-to-1 or a 26-to-1 return, we got to be a little careful about claiming credit for the things that so many other people are involved in, including teachers, coaches, churches, families, moms, dads, neighbors, troop leaders, and scouts. We don't do all of the value added to those individuals. And it's a little bit, can veer a little bit. I want to invest. I just think kind of beating our own chest about how great we're doing on everything isn't going to help us look to the future. And it's going to keep us too backward looking. And I want to be in a position where we're really talking and serving the students of tomorrow, not just the legacy ways of doing things in the past. And so I hope
Exactly what I said,
I
Bob.
hope I'm pretty much in alignment with you on it. And I don't know how to do it because everyone's afraid to even
Blue
talk
Ribbon
about it.
Commission is the only way to go, sir.
Okay, all
Get
right.
it done. You and I would be together 95% of the time. Exactly what you said is what I said, only differently.
Okay, let's agree to be in violent agreement then. And
Let's
Sean,
have a violent agreement to get a commission study to find out what we're going to do in higher education, sir.
give me the data, Sean. Don't be afraid to give it to me. Because if you've got to tell me I'm wrong, then tell me I'm wrong. I'm good with that. Michelle
Okay.
does it all the time.
Thank you, Regent Atwell. The perspectives, both of you are appreciated, and I'm glad that you stated what you had to say about the issue. And it's something that we should continue to discuss. And as you say, look into and not just shy away from. So thank you for your comments. Thank you, President Thompson, from all your
You
experience.
said I was emotional, sir. I'm
I
sorry
love it.
about that.
I love it. That's great. Any other comments or questions regarding the budget? Regent Walsh.
Thank you. On the subject of this blue ribbon group, I think I've heard that phrase brought up probably in the last year and a half more than once, and we never seem to get off home plate with it.
Right.
And so the question is, how can we as a board express our interest that we want this topic studied? We want this moving forward. I don't know of a more public forum than the one we're sitting in right now that is asking for that. So I'd like to know from my fellow regents, what is it going to take for us to do that?
Regent Rye, please.
I'll avoid comments about Regent Atwell, and probably by the end of my comments, nobody from Brown County will ever be allowed back. But you're Door County now, so I guess I am the Brown County guy. To Regent Walsh's comment, from a Regent's perspective, whether it's a Blue Ribbon Commission, whatever it is, I have to be honest with you. When I went through my budget prep meetings, and having served on boards before and running a company, this is one of the first times I've ever had a budget without a plan presented to me. And I think whether it's a commission or a strategic planning session, it is very difficult to sit through budget presentations and not know where we're going.
It's true.
And that's what I feel we're approving today. And I understand that's how it's been done. And but I sat through other committee meetings today where there was creativity around expense control and revenue generation. There was also dancing around the question of wanting to consolidate and single decision making for expense reduction. Things need to change because the pie is not going to grow magically. And I, would reiterate my colleagues' comments, and to you, Regent Walsh, I think it is time. Whether it's a commission, a planning, or whatever it is, but we can't keep passing a budget. We're really only discussed the revenue side, by the way, in the budget conversations without a plan. And wherever that's headed, whatever metrics we decide that the system is going to accomplish, then the budget discussion should happen. It just seems a little out of order right now, but I understand that's the way we've always done it, but hopefully that can change.
Thank you, Regent Warren. Right. Any other regents have comments or questions? Do any chancellors have anything they'd like us to hear? Yes. I knew I could count on you, Chancellor Shield.
Thank you. You don't hear from us enough. Regent Atwell, I can tell you there are very big structural differences happening on my campus because we don't have a choice. I've been on that slope where enrollment was growing up, and now I'm in the other place. And it's very painful, and I'm sure you know this from your own organization. The other observation I make is the investment that the state has made since I've been here. I'm finishing my 11th year, been pretty flat. There's a lot of reasons for that. But the things that we do and the expenses that we're having to absorb, mental health, compliance, don't get me started about audit. There's 30 of them this year. Holy cow. We need to do a little planning on that kind of stuff. But the people who run these institutions, all the stuff you're talking about, this is what we're fighting about, arguing about, trying to figure out every day. We're trying to find new revenue streams, be creative about it. And I could prattle on for a while, but I hope whatever method you use to sort of figure this out, that a couple of my colleagues are actively engaged in it, because we're on the ground fighting these fights every day, trying to figure out program arrays that match, creating new programs that address new needs, like physician's assistant program for rural medical health on my campus. But I don't want to talk about Platteville so much because every one of these campuses is doing that. And we don't even get a venue very often to even mention that. And if you want to talk, the last thing I'll say, there are populations that have been underserved in this state for decades, and this system has not been actively engaged in it. Thanks to Tommy's interest in these things, we're starting to think about ways to do this. And each of our campuses has to look inwardly and see what our contribution to that is. I know we need to do better and will do better. We're trying to figure out ways to do that. But the populations that are growing in this state are not the ones that are easily reached unless we change our method of doing it. So please ask for active participation from at least a couple of my colleagues in whatever you do. Thanks.
Anyone else? Chancellor Blank.
I just want to add to what my colleague Dennis here has just said. I think it's true that virtually every one of us do have plans on our campus. And I would just ask, as you're thinking about this as a board, it's always difficult to think about how you do a central plan when you've got 13 very different institutions underneath you, and sort of how do you just roll up our plans, or you do something that pushes back the other way? And it's clearly got to be a conversation back and forth. It's not something that I would hope the board would sort of say, here's what we're going to do, which could well actually do damage to some very active and good plans. The trouble is all of us are in very different worlds. Or, some of us are in very different worlds, I should say. Some of us are expecting increases in enrollment. Some of us are expecting declines in enrollment. Some of us have other sources of funding that aren't available to some of the other schools. And, that makes the central plan difficult, right? So, the question of how you go back and forth between these different units and talk about what we're doing centrally, it's complex. And then I want to say one thing this is a really minor comment, but it's one I want to make sure all the Regents know as we're thinking about tuition, right? All of the focus in the Regents tends to be on undergraduate overall tuition levels, and that's important, and I really hope you will come back and talk about that. But for many of us up here, if not all of us, we also have tuition differentials in some of our most popular schools. So I have a tuition differential in business. I have a tuition differential in engineering. My nursing school would like a tuition differential. This is true of all of our peer schools. And not only has our tuition been frozen, but our differentials have been frozen so that my engineering school, for instance, has the differential far below any of its peers. And as you think about tuition, you can't just think about the overall number. You also have to think about ways in which we can change differentials now that we have that authority. And in some cases, the trade-off between base tuition and differential tuition in some of the more popular schools gives you some additional degrees of freedom to operate under. And I just want people to have that in mind. Thanks.
Thank you, Chancellor Gao.
Thank you for soliciting our thoughts, and I'm sure everybody in the Chancellor Group knows about the comparisons of GPR, and we have had that information, and a lot of it is a function of the size of the institution. It's going to be more costly to operate a smaller institution. We've referred to the performance-based funding, and I remember that discussion very well, and that raises an interesting paradox. Take a measure like retention. And if a campus is doing well on retention, you might say, okay, give them more money to reward that. But that means the campus that's not doing well, how do they ever improve if they're not getting additional resources to make those efforts? And you can go through a whole host of measures. I mean, the one at La Crosse that we're weak on is diversity. And I'm always talking, how can we get more diversity? But it takes resources to do that. It also takes, and I think Dennis said it very well, creativity. And, I think the reason we're here is we were all pretty good at doing more with less, but you can only take that so far. And I think that gets to what Regent Atwell said, how do you strategically invest? But these are not, I wish I had answers. They're not easily solved. And Becky's point, again, we're all different. And I always get a little nervous. And Regent Miller was just very kind to come and visit. And right away I said, now, when things get aggregated, I worry about that because that provides a picture and it might not be, the full picture. So hopefully you all can find a way to approach these issues that we do benefit from the strength of a system, but also respect the diversity of the institutions and the challenges that we all face. I mean, I will confess, La Crosse, I feel very, very lucky that our campus is in the community it's in because it's just kind of the ideal size. There's a lot of things to do, but it's not a big place. And so somebody coming from a rural environment would feel, okay, I think I can be okay there. Somebody coming from an urban environment would probably the same kind of thing, but we're lucky. So anyway, thank you for asking what we think.
Okay. Chancellor, to see your hands up, not the injured one, but sorry to hear about your accident. Go ahead and make your statement or ask your question.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
You're muted, Mark.
How about now? Can you hear me okay? I think somebody has to unmute me. I'm trying to speak. Can you hear me? I think it's on your end. I'm not muted on this end. So I think it's something on yours.
I think we're working on it. Mark, want to try it again?
Test,
Unmute
test,
yourself.
test,
Try it
test.
again.
Test, test, test. Can you hear me?
Still can't hear.
Trying it again?
Can't hear.
Okay. I'm unmuted on my end, but
Well, while we're waiting for that to be resolved, does anybody else have a comment or a question on the budget? Okay, so I guess Chancellor Mone is the last. And we can't hear him. So,
I'll try it again. I'll try it again.
President,
okay,
Try it again. Test.
so I guess
test.
everybody that's listening on WebEx can hear, but we can't. All right,
President Manning.
so I don't know what to do about this.
Test, test, test.
Well, then Hector has a question. Great, Hector, go ahead.
I just want to make a comment. So Regent Walsh asked earlier, what do we need to do to start this? So what do we need to do to start this commission? Is it the governor that puts it together? Do we need to make a resolution? So where is that? Do we need to make a resolution suggesting to the governor to create this? Because we should, let's see if we can answer that question so that we can try to move this forward. So that would be one thing. The other thing is I agree with the chancellors that whatever we do, that we co-create with them. It is with and through them that any effort that we end up having is going to be more successful.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Test, 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 test.
There you go.
All right, great. Thank you. And I apologize for not being able to be there. I think many of you have heard I had a little accident and I'll be in surgery tomorrow. So I'll be back in the saddle soon. I just want to make a few brief comments in addition to what my chancellor colleagues have said, and thank you for this opportunity. Number one, there is a significant urgency associated with the issues that are being discussed. I would not offer the idea of a blue ribbon commission that may take a year or two to put things together. Just as a quick example, before the pandemic, in 2018 and 2019, we began some programs around what we called Think Tank 2030. And we realized very quickly 2030 is right now. The issues in higher education are so significant, not just demography, but the societal issues, how things are playing out, how higher education is the centerpiece of the cultural wars, the significant needs in this state. And I could go on, but I think we really need to act together. And when I say that, I'm talking about system regents and the chancellors really driving something with significant urgency. So that would be point one. Number two, I think that with respect to Regent Atwell's comments, we have not only not changed recently, but higher education has not made the fundamental significant types of changes that are absolutely necessary that every other sector has made. The classic case is what Southwest Airlines did to others, or what, for example, Netflix has done to Blockbuster and others. We really need to reinvent ourselves. Number three, I think that when we look at who owns this, I think it's going to be better for us collectively, as I mentioned, to drive this as opposed to relying on others. We need input from other stakeholders, clearly business, healthcare, nonprofits, government, others, but we really need to develop, and I think we have the answers. We have expertise collectively across, again, the regents, system, and chancellors. Comment four, I love the idea of engagement and inclusion, bring us together. And final comment is the GPR. The analogy that I use is asking an internal group to reallocate GPR is much like asking the kids to reallocate the inheritance. I think it's just very, very difficult. My model and what I suggested in Milwaukee last month was we have to increase the pie. We really have to grow that. So that does take the advocacy that Governor Thompson talked about and has really tried to do, going back to those things. We're not unique in that, by the way. States across the country have significantly disinvested in higher education. Wisconsin just happens to be toward the bottom, and there's IPEDS data that supports that. So thanks for letting me make those comments from afar. Apologize for not being there and my informal nature today.
Comments, and good luck on your surgery. All right, so Regent Bechtel.
Just very briefly, thank you, President Many Deeds. I guess my thought to answer Karen's question is that we should move forward, as you indicated, Regent Many Deeds, with that special committee that goes ahead and moves forward, looking at GPR, looking at bylaws and some of those other things. That can be very focused. It can be fast, to Chancellor Moni's position. We invite chancellors in at some point, whether we just kind of have a bit of a blueprint and then get some good discussion and what have you. But what I would urge us to do is that we set that path, we set that blueprint, and then we engage the other constituencies. I know where the business community is because I have a little more, feel for where they are and what they would be looking at. I'm not as good on the legislative side as my friend Governor Thompson and the others around the table are. But I think we know a lot and we're working in this space, and I'd like us to chart the course and then kind of, once we have a plan and kind of know where we're going, with a sense of urgency, then set that direction and gain the constituencies we need, be my own view.
Thank you. That is one of the things that I had envisioned with that special committee, and Regent Cologne resolution would be the end result of those meetings, those discussions, those inclusions with the chancellors to come up with the parameters and the wording for such a resolution regarding the Blue Ribbon Committee, or not, whatever the group decides is best and most expedient. So that's just my comment on that in response to your comment about a resolution. The end result will be that. You can't do it now without notice, and we have to study it. So anyone else, a comment or a question? Okay, not seeing any. I guess I would like to have a vote on resolution H. We've had our presentation, we've had our discussion, we've had a motion to approve in a second, and now we need a vote. So all those in favor of approving resolution 8, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much for that. I think that concludes the business that we are going to conduct in open session, and we're going to have to go into closed session. So at this time, I'd ask all board members to stay in their seats or on the line while we complete the roll call vote to move into closed session. Following the vote, please remain where you are, following the room and the lines are cleared. Vice President Walsh, will you read the motion to move into closed session?
Yes, thank you. I move that the Board of Regents move into closed session to consider personal histories related to the naming of a facility at UW Whitewater as permitted by S 19.851 and F of the Wisconsin statutes. Deliberate regarding a recommendation for dismissal with cause of a UW Stout faculty member as permitted by S 19.851A and B of the Wisconsin statutes. Consider personnel evaluations of chancellors as permitted by S 19.851C of the Wisconsin statutes. Confer with legal counsel regarding potential litigation in which it is likely to become involved regarding a contract as permitted by S 19.851 and G of the Wisconsin statutes, and discuss ongoing personnel matters as permitted by 19.851 and F of the Wisconsin statutes.
Do I have a second? Jess, could you please read the roll call, please?
Regent President Many Deeds.
Yes.
Regent Vice President Walsh.
Yes.
Regent Atwell.
Yes.
Regent Bechtel.
Yes.
Regent Bogus. Regent Cologne.
Yes.
Regent Grebe.
Yes.
Regent Jones.
Yes. Yeah.
Regent Klein. Regent Lovezo.
Yes.
Regent Miller.
Yes.
Regent Drew Peterson.
Yes.
Regent Chris Peterson.
Yes.
Regent Rye. Regent Saffold.
Yes.
Regent Tucker.
Yes.
Regent Underly. Regent Weatherly.
Yes.
We're
Thank you.
now.
We're going to take a 10-minute break.
That